Good evening. I'm Bob Davidson, founder of the Davidson Institute, along with my wife Jan, who couldn't make it here this evening. And this is Tacy Mosner from the Institute, who's Davidson Fellows Program Manager. We have several other folks from the Institute that have been helping out over the last few days, and all of us would like to welcome you to this, the 13th Annual Davidson Fellows Awards Ceremony. The Davidson Institute for Talent Development is a national nonprofit that supports profoundly gifted young people. One of the several ways actually, that we fulfill this mission is through the Davidson Fellows Scholarship Program, which recognizes the extraordinary achievements of students 18 or younger. Tonight we will be celebrating this year's 20 new Davidson Fellows. I would like to thank our congressional co-sponsors, Senator Harry Reid from our home state of Nevada, and Senator Chuck Grassley from the state of Iowa. I would also like to thank the National Museum of the American Indian, for allowing us to host our event here this evening in this rather spectacularly beautiful building here on the mall. The decor and structure of this building reminds me of the open spaces that we come from in Nevada and the American Indian heritage that we have there. Tonight we are celebrating the accomplishments of 2 Davidson Fellow laureates at the $50,000 scholarship level, 9 Davidson Fellows receiving $25,000 scholarships, and 9 more students who are receiving $10,000 scholarships. I'm going to start with the $10,000 recipients, and the first fellow I'd like to introduce is Mr. Joshua Brakensiek from Phoenix, Arizona. Joshua?
Hello, I am Joshua Brakensiek, a high school senior from Phoenix, Arizona. I did mathematical research on bounds on the size of sound monotone switching networks accepting permutation sets of directed trees. In my research, I considered a graph-theoretic problem of determining whether there is a connection between 2 nodes in a network when we are given partial information about the structure of that network. My research goal was to find a computer memory efficient procedure to solve this problem. Instead of optimizing the computation in the traditional RAM model, I considered a problem under a different paradigm called the monotone switching network model. Using this model, I was able to dramatically improve the precision of the limits of efficiency in the case that the network has no loops in it. Hopefully the techniques can be extended to a wider range of networks. I desire to use the Davidson Fellows Scholarship to help cover my college expenses as I pursue degrees in mathematics and computer science. I would like to thank my nominators, Aaron Podachin, Tanya Kovanova, and Pavel Edingoff at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for their guidance with this research. Additionally, I'd like to thank the Center for Excellence in Education, President Joanne DeGennaro, and Vice President Maite Ballestero for providing me the opportunity to conduct this research at the Research Science Institute. Finally, I'd like to thank my parents, Warren and Kathy, for their support.
You can get that later if you wish. Here you go. You hold that. Tip it up a little bit so it doesn't reflect. Our second recipient is Mr. Alec Brenner from Virginia.
Hi, I'm Alec Brenner. So as said, I come from the faraway town of McLean, Virginia. That's about 20 minutes from here. And last summer, I participated in research at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. And I did research for my science project entitled Viscoelastic Modeling of Tidal Heating in Terrestrial Exoplanets. So exoplanets are planets in other solar systems, and I studied how tidal forces, similar to the tides that are between the Earth and the Moon, how tidal forces could influence their geological characteristics. And I found that tides could substantially alter the surface and interior conditions of many exoplanets, and some exoplanets, in fact, are likely covered in magma oceans as a result of tides. And tidal forces, therefore, are very likely to alter the suitability of these planets to harbor extraterrestrial life, or possibly even humans in the far future. I hope to continue research into this and other topics of planetary science at the California Institute of Technology, where I'll be attending college this fall. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't give credit to my excellent mentors at NASA, Dr. Wade G. Henning, who is here tonight, and Dr. Terry A. Herford, for taking me in and exposing me to some of their amazing astronomical research. And thanks also to my nominators, Mrs. Laura McConaughey and Mrs. Lisa Wu, both of whom are also here tonight, for writing my recommendations and being wonderful teachers and motivators. Finally, a big thanks to my parents for encouraging me to complete my Davidson Fellows submittal and for providing life support along the way. Thank you. You can leave. Okay, all right.
Our third awardee is Mr. Michael Janner, Redlands, California.
Hello everyone, my name is Michael Janner. I'm a high school senior from Redlands, California, and for the last 3.5 years, I've worked in a chemistry lab at the University of California, Riverside. During this time, I've worked with stimulus-responsive nanostructures that interact with light in unique ways. I started simple, using metallic nanoplates as tiny mirrors that I could turn on and off with magnetic fields. I then created assemblies which not only had a binary on-off state, but also a tunability that allowed them to appear any color in the visible spectrum. These highly sensitive, color-changing structures could find use in everything from flexible computer and television screens to color-changing clothing, and from military camouflage to anti-counterfeiting devices. I'm beginning my college application process now, and I hope to attend Caltech or MIT and to continue doing research as an undergraduate with the ultimate goal of pursuing a career in academic research. Finally, I'd like to thank the people who have helped me along the way. I couldn't have done this without Dr. Yadong Yang or his graduate students at UC Riverside, especially Chao Zhang and Li He. I also couldn't have done this without the constant support and encouragement of my parents. Mom, especially thank you for all of the rides to the lab. I also owe quite a bit to my 5th grade teacher, who first sparked my curiosity in science and even had me complete my first science project. And of course, thank you to the Davidson Institute for these scholarships and in a much larger sense for your investment in the future. Thank you.
Our next awardee is Mr. Ajay Krishnan from Portland, Oregon.
Hi everyone, I'm Ajay Krishnan, a senior at the Oregon Episcopal School in Portland, Oregon. My Davidson Fellows submission was in the engineering category, and it is titled Optimizing the Microbial Fuel Cell, Microbial Electrolysis Cell Coupled System for Sustainable Hydrogen Gas Production, Electricity Generation, and Improved Wastewater Treatment. To put it simply, I created a device that can simultaneously treat wastewater and produce both electricity and hydrogen gas using anaerobic bacteria. I came up with a novel concept of varying the applied voltage supplied from the MFC to the MEC to produce both hydrogen gas and electricity. I made it possible to control the amount of electricity and hydrogen gas produced by the MFC system based on commercial demand in the market. I also improved power densities and hydrogen gas production rates in the MFC-MEC system by fabricating and using graphite plate anodes coated with multi-walled carbon nanotubes. With nearly 1 billion people in our world lacking access to electricity, and nearly 3 billion people in our world lacking access to clean water, my work has the potential to help the lives of many people across the world. Being named a Davidson Fellow is an incredible honor for me, and the scholarship that I've received will definitely help pay for my college education. I hope to attend MIT or Caltech and major in electrical or chemical engineering, as well as in applied mathematics. My dream career would be to develop efficient and environmentally friendly energy technologies to help make our planet more sustainable. I'd like to thank my nominators Peter Langley, Kristen Myers, and Marv Saran, as well as my parents, Anita Krishnan and Krishnan Palaniswamy, for their support throughout my research. Without their help, I certainly would not be standing here today. Lastly, I'd like to thank the Davidson Institute for Talent Development for providing this wonderful and unique opportunity to students across the nation. Thank you.
Our next awardee is William Kuszmaul from Lexington, Massachusetts.
Sorry. My name is William Kuszmaul. I'm from Lexington, Massachusetts, and I conduct math research in the field of enumerative combinatorics. So my paper is titled Equivalence Classes of Permutations Created Under Pattern Replacement Relations. Sort of, to describe what I study, I like to use an analogy. In English, certain words such as like soda and pop are synonyms. And so a natural question to ask is how many distinct meanings of words are there really in the English language? Well, that's not what I study, but in mathematics we like to ask a similar question, except with permutations instead of words, and with well-defined notions of equivalence instead of sort of as an analogy for the notion of English synonyms. So this question leads to a family of problems, probably the most well-known application of which has been aiding in the first proof of the so-called Littlewood-Richardson rule. In doing so, the problem ended up helping solving a 44-year-old open problem that has applications in representation theory, spectroscopy, and particle physics. My work in the area systematically builds on the foundation provided by past authors. Among other things, I found some new proof techniques which let me solve some open problems. And I hope that these will open doors for new directions of research for future authors. The Davidson Fellows Scholarship is going to give me the freedom to spend more of my time on research instead of worrying about finances in college. And on a more personal level, I feel honored to be recognized and just humbled by the amazing achievements of my fellow recipients. There are so many people that have helped me get along this path to getting here today. The MIT Primes program as a whole has been extremely supportive over the past 3 years, introducing me to research and taking a chance on a 14-year-old. The program's chief research advisor, Professor Pavel Edengoff in particular, has been a guiding force and an inspiration for me throughout my work. I want to thank my mentor, Dari Grinberg, for meeting me nearly every week over the last 2 years, and for answering my hundreds of questions over email. He's been an extraordinary help. I also want to thank MIT Professor Richard Stanley for providing me with an initial direction of research, Sergey Bernstein and Ziling Zhu for useful conversations, and my parents for always supporting my goals. I'm grateful to so many more from the mathematical community, including math teachers, friends, and camp counselors. Thank you.
Our next awardee is Miss Emily Lipstein from Port Washington, New York.
Good evening. My name is Emily Lipstein, and I'm from Port Washington, New York, and I conducted my research at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. Last summer, I completed a project concerning biodiversity and endangered species conservation entitled An Analysis of the Genetic Variation of Monachus monachus and its Implications for Conservation. Monachus monachus is a species of seal called the Mediterranean monk seal, and I assessed the genetic diversity of a population of 96 of those animals who lived in and around the islands of Greece from around the 1990s to the early 2000s. In order to do so, I focused on microsatellites, which are a part of your DNA that are both heritable and highly variable. And this allowed me to assess genetic similarities between seals from all over the Grecian archipelago. Through my research, I found that it was almost impossible to genetically differentiate between geographically distinct populations of seals. And these findings really just don't bode well for these already critically endangered seals. And there are fewer than 600 of these animals in existence in the world today, and so their fate is almost sealed. I think I'm funny. But my study supports the creation of extensive environmental legislation in order to protect and promote the survival of these animals, and really to just enforce this idea that legislation needs to be made to protect the biodiversity and promote biodiversity on this planet. While nobody can change what happened in the past with these animals, scientists and policymakers can use this as a guide for addressing future problems with other endangered species. I'm currently using my scholarship to study biology and political science at the University of Chicago. I would like to thank the Davidson Institute for the generous award, everyone at the American Museum of Natural History, especially George Amato and Becky Hirsch, for their assistance and continued support, and for being role models to me in both science and just life itself. And also for my parents for encouraging my varied passions and interests throughout my entire life.
Our next awardee is Miss Jiayi Peng from Chappaqua, New York.
Good evening. My name is Jiayi Peng. As was said, I'm from upstate New York. I've spent the last 3 years on my physics research project titled A Cellular Automaton Model of Critical Dynamics in Neural Networks. My goal was to gain insight into the complexity of the brain, which consists of over 1 billion neurons and 1 trillion connections called synapses. Today, neuroscientists are starting to unravel the brain's complexity by examining the collective dynamics as opposed to the individual neurons. Recent experiments have suggested that the brain operates at the critical point, which is an optimum state for brain operations. It is known that failure to operate at the critical state is associated with neurological disorders such as Alzheimer's and epilepsy. To better understand the critical dynamics in neural networks, I proposed a novel computer program for neural networks that combines short-term plasticity with long-term metaplasticity, 2 types of mechanisms that change the strength of connections between neurons. I found that short-term synaptic plasticity is sufficient to allow the system to get to the critical state, but is not sufficient to maintain it after perturbations. But the addition of that long-term synaptic plasticity allows the system to retain the critical state after perturbations. Working together, these 2 timescales of plasticity could help the system attain and maintain operation at the critical point. I would like to thank my mentor, Dr. Beggs from Indiana University, and my research teachers, Dr. Gessler, Misty, and Mr. Goodman. I'd also like to thank my parents, Hongdan and Going Peng for their support. My thanks also goes out to the Davidson Institute for their support of all of our different endeavors. Thank you.
Our next awardee is Mr. Vinay Sriram from Boyd's, Maryland.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vinay Sriram, and I attend Poolsville High School in Maryland. My project is titled Quantitative Modeling of Processing Cost and Energy Consumption for Cryptographically Enhanced Secure Internet Routing Protocols, and falls in the technology category. My research proposes and quantifies the benefit of several optimization algorithms designed to reduce the computational needs of secure internet routing protocols that are currently under standardization. My research illustrates that these optimizations can significantly enhance computational efficiency, speed up internet routing table convergence, and conserve energy for routers in a future internet implementing the secure protocols. This research has clear applications in upcoming years as cyber defense efforts proliferate worldwide and more secure forms of existing routing protocols are implemented in the internet. I spent the past summer extending my work in pursuing this line of research further at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. I intend to use my scholarship towards pursuing a degree in computer science or electrical engineering in college. I would like to thank the Davidson Institute and Mr. and Mrs. Davidson for the honor of being selected as a 2013 Fellow and the valuable scholarship. I would also like to thank my nominators, Mr. Doug Montgomery, Dr. T.V. Lakshman, and Dr. Curtis Siller, as well as my high school teachers and parents for their continued support and encouragement. Thank you.
The next awardee is Mr. Vaibhav Vavilala from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Well, good evening, everyone. What a pleasure it is to stand among our nation's brightest youth, the most promising young people pushing the boundaries of intellectual thought. My name is Vaibhav Vavilala. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm a freshman at Columbia University studying computer science. Over the past year, I completed a multidisciplinary project spanning physics, neuroscience, and computer science called Neural Networks, Raising the Storage Capacity. In my research, I studied neural networks, which are essentially theoretical models of the brain, using computer simulations. Motivated by biological accuracy, I identified one attribute of biological neurons that neural networks traditionally do not describe, and examined the effects of introducing the new property. My newly implemented model showed an increased memory capacity, and it may help advance applications in pattern recognition and modeling brain function. In conducting this research, I was personally mentored by Dr. Yogesh Joglekar, a theoretical physicist at IUPUI. He has demonstrated and imparted an incredible amount of patience, wisdom, and encouragement throughout the research process, and my deepest gratitude goes to him. Additionally, my family, my mom, my dad, my brother Vikas, have been highly supportive of all my endeavors, especially of this project. So I'd like to thank them as well. I'd also like to mention that my grandmother was able to make it from India, which is very nice. Next, I must say that I feel it is highly encouraging to know that my work is being recognized and supported by an organization as prestigious and catalytic to talent development as the Davidson Institute. So I want to thank Bob and Jan Davidson, the founders of this wonderful organization. Additionally, I say a word of thanks to Tacey Mosner for tirelessly organizing and coordinating this event. Finally, while I'm astounded at what we've all achieved already, I'm even more humbled by how much more work there is to be done. To me, the Davidson Fellowship is like an oath that we pledge our lives to constantly work on humanity's most pressing problems in every field imaginable. I count myself lucky to be part of such an incredible group of scholars, activists, and humanitarians. Being here is a huge honor and is something that I will cherish for many years to come. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our $25,000 recipients. The first is Ankita Ghoshal from Austin, Texas.
Hi, I'm Ankita Ghoshal, and I'm from Austin, Texas. I was prompted to pursue my Davidson Fellows project after spending hours in my grandparents' apartment in India without power during a period of time called load shedding, when the government rations electricity to consumers. And I saw firsthand how a necessity was inaccessible to so many people. The issue of electricity access for rural communities has grown more prominent as it's directly linked to the success of a nation. Agricultural productivity, education, social life, and networking are all linked to access to electricity. Though my grandparents had a TV and computer that required an outlet, they, as well as other rural and urban citizens, had a functioning gas stove and lanterns around the apartment. While sitting in the pitch-black room, I wondered whether these common heat sources could potentially help the 1.6 billion people in the world who live without access to power grids. My goal was to create a sustainable, low-cost thermoelectric power generator that ran solely on available heat sources. After researching methods and materials and approaching a local commercial lab that helped me with this technology project, I began building and experimenting. I used thermoelectric power generators and sandwiched them between two ceramic substrates. 3 of these chips lay flat on a steel plate acting as the heated side. I chose to use just a simple sterno flame, a very obtainable material for anyone, as my heat source. The power generated by the thermoelectric chips depend on a temperature difference across the 2 surfaces of the plate, with the flame heating the hot surface and the ambient temperature keeping the other surface cool. The greater the temperature difference, the greater the efficiency of the multi-mode power generator. My first prototype could eventually power a 5-watt LED bulb, and in the summer of 2012, I was lucky enough to go to India and intern with a company called Godrej and Boyce, where I was able to turn my science project into a viable product by interviewing potential customers in rural areas and by building a second prototype in the company's lab. I'm currently a freshman at Princeton studying chemical engineering, where I hope to continue my interest in alternative energy solutions and planning on extending my research experience. I'd like to thank my research mentors, Ki Kohli, Dr. Himanshu Pukarna, and Dr. Ravi Prasher for guiding me through the entire process, and my parents for encouraging me to pursue this. And lastly, the Davidson Institute for recognizing a project that I had so much fun with.
Let's take a picture. Our next recipient is from Montclair, New Jersey, Mr. Coleman Hughes.
Hello, My name is Coleman Hughes and I grew up in Montclair, New Jersey. Before I introduce my project, I'd like to show my appreciation for the people who helped me get here. First, I'd like to thank my parents for their unstinting support of my goals as a musician and a scholar. Next, I'd like to thank my nominators, Steve Teray, Christian McBride, Douglas Purviance, and my school music teachers, Julius Tolentino and Amy Emilianoff. I am also grateful for the countless other musicians and teachers who've helped me along the way. And lastly, I'd like to thank the Davidson Institute for their generosity, open-mindedness, and commitment to recognition of excellence in all fields. My project is entitled The Rhythm of Free Expression, Honoring the Great Jazz Masters. The purpose of my project was to assemble and perform a collection of compositions by some of the greatest composers that America has ever produced. In this way, I hope to honor the legacy of this homegrown art form and recognize those men and women who created the music that has filled my life with meaning. Having been honored as a Davidson Fellow, I plan to continue developing myself as a musician and a scholar in an effort to serve as a global ambassador for America's classical music, jazz. Thank you for your attention, and congratulations to all the Davidson Fellows.
Our next awardee is Mr. Harrison Lead from Dix Hills, New York.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Harrison Lee. I'm currently a senior at War Melville High School in East Autauga, New York, which is located approximately 60 miles east of New York City on Long Island. Before I begin, I would like to take the time to thank the Davidson Institute for providing me with the opportunity to be here today and for supporting my education. Their generous gift will undoubtedly allow me to pursue my future goals farther than I ever previously imagined possible. My Davidson portfolio was a research project in the field of meteorology titled Determining Interannual and Spatial Trends in Convective Frequency over the Northeastern United States based on reanalysis of convective parameters. Essentially, the project entailed creating statistical models to predict the frequency of thunderstorms over the northeastern United States based on local atmospheric conditions of instability, moisture, and lift, which are the three primary ingredients that fuel thunderstorms. The models turned out to be significantly more accurate than previous environment-based convective predictors of the same type, because I was able to take advantage of a new, higher resolution meteorological dataset called the North American Regional Reanalysis. This allowed me to create separate models for various small regions of the northeastern United States, unlike previous studies which created and applied such predictors over large regions of the world. And by taking in input from climate models, hopefully these thresholds will have the ability to predict thunderstorm frequencies into the future due to climate change. Since I submitted my Davidson portfolio, I have continued work on this project. Some of the improvements I have worked on this summer as a Simons Fellow include replacing one of the variables in the models with a different one, and using various atmospheric variables to explain the physical mechanisms associated with the observed trends. But none of this would have been possible without the support of so many wonderful individuals. First and foremost is my research mentor, Professor Brian Colley of the School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences at Stony Brook University in Stony Brook, New York, whose experience, patience, and intellect were always there for me to provide constructive, detailed feedback on my work. I would also like to thank Dr. George J. Baldo, director of the INSTAR research program at my high school, who not only provided suggestions on revising my paper for clarity, but also provided me with preliminary research experiences before I got my feet wet with the Davidson project. I would be remiss not to acknowledge the American public school system, for providing me with the sound critical thinking skills necessary to carry out my project, and for providing me with two wonderful nominators, the teachers Mr. Robert Spira and Mr. Donald Ambrose. And last, but certainly not least, I'm forever indebted to my mother, Diana, and my father, Kai, who are here with me today in the audience, and have been relentless in supporting my efforts by lifting me up when I fall down, by pulling me up when I rise too high, by trusting me, by nurturing me, by sacrificing their hard-earned time and energy for me. I am so terribly fortunate to have such amazing individuals in my life. Thank you.
Our next awardee is Miss Aashna Mago from Newtown, Pennsylvania.
Good evening. My name is Aashna Mago, and I'm from Newtown, Pennsylvania. My project is called A Novel EZH2 Histone Methyltransferase Inhibitor, Potential Advancement in Epigenetic Cancer Therapy. I conducted research at Princeton University's Molecular Biology Department for almost a year and tested a synthetic molecule that has the potential to be part of a new type of cancer treatment. I worked with an enzyme called EZH2, which is responsible for adding methyl groups to a protein in the nucleus. EZH2 promotes the multiplication of cells and their differentiation into different types of cells, which normally helps to maintain stem cells. When EZH2 is overexpressed, however, it contributes to the invasiveness and the development of many types of cancer, including liver cancer, lung cancer, and breast cancer. My goal was to assess the efficacy of a new synthetic peptide as an EZH2 inhibitor, and to determine whether or not it has the potential to be part of a new type of epigenetic cancer therapy. My study was the first to show that this drug can significantly inhibit EZH2 activity and inhibit EZH2 and reduce its activity in a cell-based setting. My drug was specific in its ability to inhibit EZH2, and a control peptide did not have the same effects. It is one of the first direct inhibitors of EZH2, and unlike previous attempts to inhibit the enzyme, it does not interfere with other normal biological processes. Thus, the drug is suitable for further investigation as a potential novel drug treatment for cancer. I'm currently a freshman at Stanford University, and the money I've received from the Davidson Institute is paying for a substantial portion of my tuition this year. I'm honored to be a Davidson Fellow, and I'm very grateful for the scholarship. I would also like to acknowledge my two mentors at Princeton, Dr. Benjamin Garcia, and at the Lawrenceville School, Dr. Elizabeth Fox, who's here tonight. I would also like to thank Barry Z, a graduate student in the Garcia Lab, and the Flautas Chemical Engineering Lab at Princeton University for their collaborations. And lastly, I'd like to thank my parents for always supporting me in my research. Thank you.
Our next recipient is from Cupertino, California, Miss Natalie Ng.
Good evening. My name is Natalie Ng. I'm a senior at Monte Vista High School in Cupertino, California. My project is titled MicroRNA Prognostic Signatures and Prediction Models for Distant Metastases-Free Survival in Breast Cancer. In my project, I aim to develop microRNA prognostic signatures as a diagnostic tool for breast cancer. I started on breast cancer research because it is the most prevalent form of cancer diagnosed in women worldwide. Sadly, 1 in 8 women will develop breast cancer in her lifetime. A frustrating reality about breast cancer is that even when initial hormonal treatment seems to work, metastatic cancer cells can survive and spread to distant sites in the body. Therefore, accurate prediction of metastatic outcome, which my project aims to do, can significantly improve the ability to predict the risk of recurrence and to devise the appropriate long-term treatment strategy. It is such an honor to be a 2013 Davidson Fellow. I will be using the scholarship money to hopefully get a double major in computer science and a biological science discipline at whatever university I am fortunate enough to attend. I really love leveraging the power of computers to discover new things from biological data. I would like to thank my mentors, Drs. Deborah Taburin and Stuart Chigendrich of Ingenuity Systems, for providing me with an internship in the summer of 2012, where I was inspired to take on breast cancer research. I am also very grateful to Professor Changzhen Chen of Stanford University for generously supporting my research in his lab. Many thanks are also due to Dr. Rita Fragoso, my direct mentor at Chen Lab, for providing me hands-on training for many laboratory procedures. I would also like to thank the many wonderful people who supported me during my journey, including my teachers and my parents. Finally, thanks to the Davidson Institute for inviting me to DC and for honoring me tonight. Thank you.
Okay, our next awardee is Miss Kaley Peterson from Lincoln, Nebraska.
Hello, my name is Kailee Peterson, and I am the 2013 Davidson Fellow in Literature from Lincoln, Nebraska. With my project, The Transliteration of Flesh, Dismantling the Meta-Narrative, I seek to confront the complex oppressive forces that the powerless and disadvantaged experience every day. Just as literature can propagate systemic inequality in society, it can also be its destroyer. What is the meta-narrative? It is a totalizing narrative of human experience that erases minority perspectives. As a result, it functions as the grand arbiter of societal normativity as defined by the dominant culture. This produces a singular false ideal to which the marginalized must aspire. The internalization of this paradoxical state manifests as the colonial disembodiment of the self, the transliteration of flesh. In transliterating flesh, the violent suppression of the self becomes the most evident lived consequence of the meta-narrative. I'm currently a freshman at Columbia University studying English and psychology. With the funds provided by the Davidson Fellowship, I would like to continue graduate study in the humanities, possibly in the field of literature. I would also like to thank my parents for their tireless support, as well as my nominators Dr. Sarah Thomas, Mr. William Diamond, and Dr. Lynn Palmer for their constant assistance in the creation and revision of my portfolio. I would also like to thank the Davidson Institute for their generous scholarship. The transliteration of flesh is comprehensive in its violence, the colonial severing of the body from the self. However, it is not invincible. Dismantling the meta-narrative by exposing its flawed binaries removes the impetus for transliteration, eradicating the power structure that supports it. To ignore the meta-narrative is to reinforce the hierarchy of domination through passivity, but to deconstruct it is to challenge its fragile foundation. The meta-narrative punishes those who transgress because it is self-perpetuating, an elegant machine of narrative oppression. But machines are by definition inhuman, and I have chosen humanity. Thank you.
Our next awardee is Lilia Popova from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Hi, I'm Lilia Popova, and I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan. The title of my project and science submission to the Davidson Fellows Scholarship was Environmental and Genetic Mechanisms of Magnetically Altered Plant Growth. Basically, it sounds like a mouthful, but essentially what my science submission showed was that plants are affected by a form of non-ionizing radiation known as static magnetic fields. So I found that magnetic fields actually affect nutrient and water cycling in soil environments resulting in altered uptake by plants. And I also found evidence to suggest that plants possess a method through which they can sense and respond to this form of non-ionizing radiation through the activation and altered expression of key genes in the root developmental network. So why does this matter? To kind of frame the problem, agriculture is the single greatest contributor to global climate change currently. So we, currently our population is growing exponentially, and we're expected to hit over 9 billion people by 2050. So if this is true, we actually need to double our global food production, if not triple it. But we're already farming over 33 million kilometers of global cropland, which is about the size of Africa. So there's not much room to expand because we're already farming all areas that can be farmed. So the problem comes with either in agriculture, you either have to increase what's called the yield ceiling, which is the amount of crop you can produce, or close yield gaps, which means the crops that's lost to disease, to lack of water or lack of nutrients. And, but we're currently we've more than doubled the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus circulating through our environment through use of supplemental fertilizers, and irrigation is the greatest use of water consumption in the world. So my project has applications in the development of sustainable agriculture through use of adapting farming strategies to environments prone to this form of radiation, or the use of harnessing this radiation and using it in conducting ways to promote rather than inhibit and damage plant growth. So essentially a way to improve crop yields and quality in response to environmental stressors. I'm currently a freshman at Stanford University, and I plan to use this scholarship to continue studies in bioinformatics, and I'll likely am considering medical school later on. I'd like to thank my nominators, mentors, teachers, friends, and family who are here today, as well as the Davidson Fellows program for this generous scholarship. Thank you.
Our next awardee is Mr. Thabit Pulak.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everyone for coming here, and I'm very happy to be here today for this reception. My name is Thabit Pulak, and I'm currently a senior at Richardson High School in Dallas, Texas. The project I worked on was called the Home-Based Arsenic Water Filter and Rapid Arsenic Water Test, pertaining to environmental sciences. Currently, over 100 million people across the world are affected by arsenic water poisoning by drinking water supplies tainted with arsenic, which is a poisonous chemical compound. These people are spread across the world, mostly in underdeveloped countries, but also in countries like the United States. In my state, Texas, in many rural areas, there are people drinking huge amounts of arsenic in their water. Usually, arsenic poisoning results in bodily invasive cancer and is deadly if it progresses to a high stage. I personally became aware of this problem when I visited my grandparents in Bangladesh, the country of my ethnicity, in the summer of 2011. Bangladesh is one of the hardest hit countries in the world for arsenic water poisoning victims, with over 50 million people affected by arsenic water poisoning. While there are existing filtration solutions in existence to remove arsenic from water, these filters are often too expensive for the average villager to afford. Testing for arsenic is also very expensive, and many water wells contaminated with arsenic are unnoticed. My project focused on designing an arsenic water filter that was over 10 times cheaper than existing filters. Using the same technology in the filters, I also developed an arsenic water test that was over 1,000 times cheaper than existing water tests. The main hallmark of this filter and test is that it consisted of entirely home-based materials, and it ensured that the whole arsenic package was open-sourced, with no licensing involved. If one wishes, they can actually make this filter and test setup using homemade materials just lying around. Ultimately, I believe that for a product to be fully humanitarian, it must be completely open-sourced. Currently, the project is in a test pilot in Bangladesh. The pilot is being carried out through a network of volunteers I organized underneath a nonprofit organization called iCormi. Through weekly meetings, I keep track of progress, and I'm constantly trying to make improvements to the project based on the input I get from testers. I would like to thank my teachers at school for their support, most notably Ms. Hammer, my chemistry teacher, who wasn't able to make it here today. But I would also like to thank Mr. Charles Pickett, my school principal, who's given me lots of support in all my ideas, including my project. And last but not least, I would like to thank my parents. My parents have always refused to sleep whenever I was awake. I would remember those nights when my mother or father would stay up with me late in the night, sometimes as late as 3 in the morning, always giving me food like cookies and milk to keep me going, to make sure I was comfortable. Without their help and support, I would not have been able to do this project. I'd also like to thank my 2 sisters who are also with me here today. They always accompany me to pretty much any science competition, and including this Davidson Fellows reception, and they miss school and make up work, and they're always happy to do it just for me. To close, I'd like to thank the Davidson Institute for giving me this honor and inviting me here to be here today. The scholarship that has come with this honor will go a long way to pay for college, to which I'm actually applying to right now. And I thank everybody very much. Thank you.
Our next awardee is Mr. David Steinberg from Rancho Palos Verdes, California.
My name is David Steinberg, and I'm from Palos Verdes Peninsula High School in Rolling Hills Estates, California. My project is the Pre-Shortseum Puzzle Project in the Outside the Box category. The Pre-Shortseum Puzzle Project is a collaborative effort involving more than 40 volunteers worldwide to build a digitized, fully analyzable database of more than 16,000 New York Times crossword puzzles published before Will Shortz became editor. The project has an extensive website devoted to pre-Shortseum puzzles, constructors, and editors. The pre-Shortseum puzzles range over more than 50 years, from February 15, 1942 to November 20th, 1993. They were buried in hard-to-find PDF files of individual issues of the New York Times and basically lost to history. I wanted to find them all, download the PDFs, and convert them into easily accessible, analyzable files. So far, 30 years of puzzles have been digitized, and nearly half of those have been proofread. They're now available on Expert Info, a website created by former New York Times crossword blogger Jim Horn. I'm hoping that someday every single New York Times daily and Sunday crossword puzzle ever published will be available on the site. So constructors and solvers will have access to the works of long-forgotten constructors. Future research on these puzzles should provide interesting historical, sociological, and statistical insights into the times in which these puzzles were constructed, confirm or correct existing records, and further our understanding of the development of American-style crossword puzzles. My plans for the future include continuing to work on the Pre-Shortseum Puzzle Project and continuing to construct and edit crossword puzzles. In 2 years, I plan to attend college, which I will use my Davidson Fellows scholarship to help pay for. I am very grateful for this award and would like to thank the judges and Davidson Institute for Talent Development again. I'd also like to thank all the following people: my science research teacher, Peter Stardub, all the volunteer digitizers and proofreaders, especially Barry Haldeman, everyone in the crossword community who has helped make the website what it is today, my 3 nominators who have been incredibly helpful: Jim Horn of Expert Info, Stan Newman, crossword editor of Newsday, and Will Shortz, crossword editor of the New York Times. Finally, I'd like to thank my parents, Karen and Paul Steinberg, who have supported me in all my crossword endeavors and been my biggest cheerleaders. Thanks so much again, everyone.
And now we reach the upper level of Davidson Fellow Awards. And this year we have 2 $50,000 recipients. First, we have Ms. Hannah Larsen from Eugene, Oregon.
Hi, I'm Hannah Larsen from Eugene, Oregon. I did a math research project in abstract algebra called Classification of Some Fusion Categories of Rank 4. A fusion category is a fundamental mathematical object that appears in many areas of math, as well as in theoretical physics and computer science. My results extend our knowledge of fusion categories and hopefully give insight into the ongoing problem of classifying all fusion categories. I'm currently attending Harvard College, where I plan to major in mathematics. I hope to be involved in many more research projects and eventually become a professor at a research university. I would like to thank the Davidson Institute for this wonderful opportunity, my mentor, Professor Ostrich at the University of Oregon, as well as Professors Proudfoot and Brundon for providing mathematical guidance. And lastly, my mother, Winnie Kerner, and brother, Eric Larsen, for their continued support. Thank you.
Our second $50,000 awardee from Midlothian, Virginia, is Miss Samantha Marquez.
Hi everyone, my name is Samantha Marquez. I'm 17 years old and I'm a senior at Maggie Walker Governor's School in Richmond, Virginia. My bioengineering Davidson project was focused on developing colloidosomes and the self-assembly process for bioengineering three-dimensional tissues in core shell structures. My research focused on demonstrating several applications of the colloidosomes, from liver repair and reconstruction to biological sensors and neural tissue transplantation, even to green biodefense tools for the sequestration of radioactive heavy metals such as cesium-137. The revolutionary versatility of the colloidosome in the types of cells and templates that can be used to bioengineer the structure allow for virtually endless application possibilities. I would like to thank the Davidson Institute for the scholarship to help fund education, dreams, and inspiration for more than just the 20 of us here today. I can't describe how humbling it is to be among this list of remarkable innovators that will be shaping this country's and world's future. I would especially like to thank Mrs. and Mr. Davidson for their dedication and service that nurtures tomorrow's young leaders. I also thank my mentors, Professor Cheng, Professor Angelini, Professor Garcia, and Professor Waits, my teachers and my friends, for all their support throughout the years, no matter what seemingly crazy goals I might have had. And most importantly, I'd like to thank my parents and my sister for everything they have done to make my dreams a reality. Siempre me dicen ustedes que nadie te quita lo vivido, y mira cuánto hemos vivido, te quiero infinito. As we find our passion in our fields and develop a sense of leadership, we become our dreams. We become poets, we become musicians, we become scientists, we become philanthropists, we become politicians. And we gain a role of responsibility, a responsibility to serve the people, and most importantly, a responsibility to improve the quality of humanity. Thank you.
Congratulations to all the this year's Davidson Fellows. Stand up. Yeah. There they are. Okay, very good. Thank you. As you folks move forward through your education and your careers, we know you'll continue to make a positive difference for everyone. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge all the teachers, the mentors, the nominators here tonight, as well as the families of our fellows. Thank you for everything you have done to support these immensely talented young people. We are thrilled to recognize the 2013 Davidson Fellows not only for their incredible projects, but also for the journey they forged to reach this point. Every year we are amazed, again this year, by the breadth and depth of the Fellows' accomplishments. With nurturing, gifted students will be among those who will solve the world's most vexing problems. Thank you again for everybody here for sharing this special evening with us. Good night.